Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dave McConnell.
I guess it's time. I guess it's time. Are you having fun? Can you hear me? Do you want to hear me? Okay, it says here, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 61st Annual Radio and Television Correspondents Association Salute to Congress Dinner. You are part of another record-setting number of guests, in spite of the last-minute travel plans of President Bush and many members of Congress who are, of course, attending the Pope's funeral in Rome. Let me try something here.
Just blow into the microphone. It's good though. It works every time.
Oh. Thank you for the applause. Anyway, now that you can all hear, good evening again, and welcome to our little get-together here. This is our Salute to Congress dinner. We do it every year, and you would be happy to know that you are part of a record crowd, some of the biggest guests that we've had, the largest amount of guests we've had. Despite the last, applaud yourself anytime you wish. Despite of the last-minute travel plans, of course, for President Bush and many members of Congress who are attending the Pope's funeral in Rome. And of course, we wish the President and the members Godspeed in that. One of the long-standing traditions of the association is the toast to our honored guests. Now, this would be the President, the Vice President, and a host of members of Congress. Those who are seated here at the head table, as well as in the audience. So please stand now, if you will, and join me and the Executive Committee in that tradition. And so I say to the President, to the Vice President, and to the members of the 109th Congress, hear, hear. Thank you very much, and you can be seated now. Gives me great pleasure now to introduce our head table. If you would please hold your applause until I've finished calling everybody's name. And what I'm going to begin here with is from my far left, your right, Tina Tate, the director of the House Radio Television Gallery. Tom Cole of Tribune Broadcasting. Heather Dahl of Capital News Connection with PRI. Trent Duffy, the Deputy Press Secretary to the President. Thank you for being here. My friend and colleague, and well known to you all, Jerry Bodlander of Associated Press Radio. Ron Bonjean, Press Secretary to House Speaker Dennis Hastert. The irrepressible Annie Tin of C-SPAN. We're pleased to have Representative Bob Menendez of New Jersey. He's the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. And in the bipartisan spirit of what we always do here, Senate Majority Whip Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. Thank you, Cousin Mitch. Okay, and of course, last but not least, my successor here, Michael Vaquera of NBC News.
Brian Wilson.
I would also like to introduce Brian Wilson of Fox Television. I did that deliberately because I wanted to make him wait a little bit, give him a bigger hand, and he got a bigger hand. Okay, now from my far right, your left, Mike Mastrian. He's our newly named director of the Senate Radio TV Gallery. Ted Barrett of CNN. Bob Stevenson, communications director for Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist. Andres Seabrook of National Public Radio. Representative Joe Barton of Texas. He's the chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Ellen Schweiger of C-SPAN. Of course, Mrs. Lynn Cheney, the Vice President's wife. Edward O'Keefe of ABC News. And finally, Vice President Dick Cheney. Let's have one more round of applause for everybody on the head table. A lasting tradition of the Radio Television Correspondents' Dinner has been the presentation of the Joan Shorenstein Barone Award. It was created to honor the memory of the former executive producer of the CBS News program Face the Nation. This award is given for excellence in national affairs and public policy reporting. I'd like to take a moment to welcome Joan's father, Walter Shorenstein. He's joined us tonight, and he's sitting right here in front. Walter? You do us great honor, Walter, for being with us here. We appreciate it. And now here to present the Barone Awards is Bill Plant of CBS News, who knew and worked with Joan. So if Bill will come up.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Joan Shorenstein Barone Award is presented in memory of a woman of great intelligence and great enthusiasm, whom I was privileged to know when she worked at CBS News. Joan's passion for and her grasp of politics was absolutely sweeping. As the producer of Face the Nation, she always knew the right question to ask. I remember being on the panel many times, and I would hear her in my ear, and she would say, "Ask him about the money." As redoubtable as she was socially, she was wonderful. Professionally, she was equally wonderful socially. A lover of great food and wine, someone after my own heart. Someone who treasured her friends, even more important. We still mourn the fact that illness took her so soon in a productive life. But with this award, we remember her spirit, her contributions to our craft. Here's what the judges had to say about this year's winner. The winner of the Joan Shorenstein Barone Award used simple, straightforward, yet very descriptive writing to hook the viewer during the 2004 presidential campaign. The judges were particularly struck by the insightfulness of the reporting, as well as the way the correspondent succinctly described key moments in the 2004 presidential race under deadline pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's winner for a series of reports on the 2004 presidential campaign, which aired on CNN senior political correspondent Candy Crowley. We have to stand. Okay, we have to stand here.
Oh, wow. Good thing I went shopping today. I'm so glad to have you here. Absolutely. I'm so glad I went shopping this afternoon. Thank you very much. Mr. Shorenstein, I didn't know your daughter. I know lots of people who did. I know that she stood for integrity and accuracy and class in news reporting. It's an honor to be associated with all of those qualities. Look, When my children were little, they learned really early on that I loved a story. I'd tell them stories at night and make them up, but I also like to hear stories. So as they grew older and wanted me to root for whatever their team was, which was generally a team that was not what their brother wanted, they would tell me a story about the team and say, Mom, you're going to love this team because they have a player and he's an orphan and the coach adopted him. And they tell me all these great stories. I'd say, okay, I'm for that team, and I'd sit down. So they're adults and they continue this now. And one of them was, of course, for Illinois and the other one was for North Carolina. And the one that called me about North Carolina called me about Illinois, said, Mom, I know you're going to root for my team. And I said, why? And he said, because they share. They're a team that believes in team. I'm a reporter that believes in team. This is Sasha Johnson, another third. Sasha is one of those producers that will spend the night in the emergency room on election eve waiting for me to get my broken finger set and still be up the next morning and beating the Jesus out of all of the sources saying, tell me this, tell me that. She is a take no prisoners kind of producer. I would not have this without her. The other third of Team Crowley is Mike Roselli, who is on a shoot in Chicago. He's been my rock forever. He's the producer that understands the real importance of a Diet Coke at 6 a.m. in the morning, and also understands the beauty of a moment that tells you everything you need to know about a candidate. Without them, I wouldn't be standing here. I thank them publicly. Everybody should be so lucky. I wish I knew the editors and the shooters that shot this piece. The truth of the matter is, we had a number of terrific shooters on the campaign with us who never complained once. The only thing they ever asked for was to be on the campaign. We would throw these pieces down to Atlanta, and an editor would take it on as their own and make it look good. They cared. I thank all of the editors and the camera people and the sound people at CNN. They are a terrific group. They are dedicated. They believe in real journalism. So do I. Thank you all very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Candy. 2 years ago, the association created the David Bloom Award for Enterprise Reporting to honor our fallen colleague and a former member of the association. He died, as we know, while covering the war in Iraq. Here to present the second David Bloom Award are David's brothers Jim and John Bloom.
Good evening. Today is a significant day for our family. Not only is this the second annual presentation of the David Bloom Award, but today, April 6th, is also the 2-year anniversary of the day that our brother Dave died just outside of Baghdad. This has been a difficult 2 years for our family, for David's wife, Melanie, and for my parents, Harry and Laura Bloom, all of whom are here tonight. Most difficult of all has been trying to explain to 3 young girls, Dave's daughters, Nicole, Christine, and Ava, why God would take their daddy away from them. We've all looked back and said, what if? What if we could turn back time? What if Dave hadn't gone? What if I could have my brother, husband, and son back? But though our hearts want it to be otherwise, we know it cannot be. Nothing would have stopped Dave from going to Iraq. He so strongly believed in his obligation to tell the story of the war. David believed with great conviction that this was not a job, but a duty. A duty to take the abundant skills he possessed and apply them to the age-old story of war in a modern, revolutionary way, a way that seized all of America and captivated each of us. a way that allowed us at home to empathize with soldiers like never before. With David's eyes and voice, we were suddenly standing aside a tank, feeling the intensity of the sandstorm, sitting next to a soldier who had missed the birth of his first child. We participated like never before, and we understood another side of war like never before. David dreamed of this kind of reporting. He knew it could be done, and he knew it could change his field, and he was unstoppable in working to bring his vision to life. David was driven by his passion to be the absolute best, and in Iraq, he was. So today, instead of asking what if, I ask myself, what now? What can I, what can you do differently right now so that David's death will be a source of inspiration and motivation? Dave attacked life with a passion and zeal that few of us can duplicate. In 39 short years, Dave saw more of the world, touched more lives, and had higher times than most of us will know in 39 lifetimes. It's this that I think of when I wake in the morning and go to bed each night. And something that I would urge each of you here today to do. In your professions, you have the unique ability to touch lives. Handle that responsibility with care, but more importantly, with passion. See David as an inspiration to never say that it is good enough. Thank you.
This award, given in Dave's name, is intended to honor the journalists who exemplify the same passion, perseverance, and innovation as my brother. The judges considered an outstanding series of entries for this year's David Bloom Award, but one stood out for its thorough and sensitive treatment of a difficult and underreported subject: the struggle of veterans of the Iraq War to overcome what may be the most painful and debilitating of injuries, their badly burned bodies. The November 2004 report took us inside the Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, the Defense Department's only burn unit. The report never flinched from the hard reality facing patients and their doctors. In its honest treatment of the subject, the report revealed the full measure of those soldiers' courage in rebuilding their bodies, repairing their spirits, and living with their tragic disfigurement. This year's winner of the David Bloom Award is ABC News' Nightline program entitled Burn Unit.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Chairman, members of Congress, distinguished guests. Ted Koppel, who spearheaded this project, had hoped to be here tonight, but he said something about a job interview somewhere. So he asked me to fill in his stead, and actually I've gotten kind of used to that. It was almost 1 year ago that Ted and Nightline put together a broadcast which we called The Fallen. And in that broadcast, Ted simply read the names of the American war dead in Iraq, and we showed the photographs of those who died for their country. That program generated a certain amount of controversy, but since then we have strived with very little notice or controversy or fanfare to document the stories of those brave men and women who have been injured in that war. And just as David Bloom believed so strongly that the American people deserved a full accounting when Americans sent their sons and daughters to put their lives on the line, as David himself put his life on the line. We believe, and all of us believe, that the press has a responsibility to examine how the nation treats its casualties of war. And our producer, Rochelle Rogers, and I don't know if she's here tonight, tackled that subject with a passion that I think would have made David Bloom enormously proud. Her beat simply has been the wounded. It has taken her to the amputee unit at Walter Reed. It's taken her to the burn unit in San Antonio. It's taken her on the flight from Baghdad to Landstuhl. And it's taken her into the homes of men and women who have been injured in the service of their country. Her body of work is second to none on this, so it is with enormous pride and satisfaction that on behalf of her and the Nightline staff, I accept this award. And one final note, because this award is in the name of a courageous journalist. I would be remiss if I did not mention the name of one of the most courageous, committed, and passionate journalists I've ever had the pleasure of working with. As my boss, David Weston, has said, Peter Jennings now has the toughest assignment of his career. And so I hope you'll join me in keeping Peter in your hearts and in your prayers and in wishing him a timely and robust recovery. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, of course, to all of the winners. I'd like to thank this year's judges who served for both the Barone and Bloom Awards for dedicating their time and energy. Of course, Jerry Bodlander of AP Radio, Mary Hager, sure, Mary Hager of CBS News, and Steve Turnham of CNN. Certainly deserving of your applause. It is now my distinct pleasure and great honor to introduce to you the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney.
Thank you very much. Well, it's good to be with all of you once again, and I appreciate the invitation. It's a pleasure to congratulate this year's award recipients. And Lynn and I also want to join all of you in sending our good wishes this evening to Peter Jennings and to Tony Snow as well. And let me thank Dave McConnell for the introduction and for pronouncing my name correctly. I've been in this city off and on now for nearly 40 years, and there are still a lot of folks who don't know if it's Cheney or Cheney. I'll confess I haven't always been sure myself. But a few years ago I had a chance to find out. I went to a family reunion, and my oldest living relative was there, a fellow we called Uncle Arv. He's really a good guy, but kind of eccentric. He'd fit right in with tonight's crowd. Anyway, I was visiting with Uncle Arv and sat there, ate a little dog with him, and I asked him, I said, what is it, Cheney or Cheney? He said, son, it's Cheney. I was grateful for the information. I wanted to be nice, and I thanked him and said, by the way, that's a nice dog you've got there. What kind of dog is it? He said, it's a bagel. Now, I know that's an old joke, but I only found out a couple of days ago that I had to be here tonight and be funny. I'm not into funny. I don't want you to get worried, but just the other day I had this strange feeling in my chest. I found myself short of breath, shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then Lynn explained. She said, Dick, that's called laughing. In the President's absence, the Radio and TV Correspondents Association decided on me as a replacement. I was pleased to accept because I really am the logical choice after George W. Bush, if you think about it. Not that I'm thinking about it. I realize we've probably got some potential candidates for 2008 in the room right now, so I want to make my plans absolutely clear. I have no intention of running for the nomination in 2008. I'm certain the Republican Party will do just fine in that election. We have a lot of terrific candidates out there, and just to prove my confidence in the field, I've agreed to lead the search committee to pick the next nominee. But ladies and gentlemen, I do want to be serious for a moment tonight, and I want to convey the personal regards from the President and Laura, who left for Rome this morning and arrived there just a few hours ago. On Friday, they'll lead the American delegation at the funeral mass for Pope John Paul II, accompanied by Secretary Rice and former Presidents Clinton and Bush. This is the first time a U.S. president has attended a papal funeral, and the gesture could never be more appropriate. Pope John Paul II was the rarest of men, and one of those leaders whose name will be familiar hundreds of years from now. Just last year, Lynn and I had the honor of meeting the Pope at the Vatican, and we were very grateful to have that memory. Because he served so long, journeyed so far, and invited so many into his presence, I'm sure many in this room have covered the Pope at one point or another, either in this country or abroad. If you ever saw John Paul II in person, then you are in a group that numbers in the hundreds of millions. Others have spoken of the religious significance of John Paul's papacy. All of us, I think, can give testimony to his impact on history. At first glance, nearly 27 years ago, the world knew him only as the Polish Pope. We now know him for all that he was, a force for good in the world, guiding the faithful and at times helping guide great events. The quiet, humble priest who lived under Nazism and communism rose to become a great foe of tyranny, not fearing any man, not submitting to any evil, and always bearing witness to hope. Those with power who had others at their mercy, he challenged with the greater power of unarmed truth. He set himself against all acts of tyranny, large and small. The Pope was a worldly and intellectual man who understood his times probably as well as anyone else alive, yet never sought to please the listener or to ratify popular opinion. He tried instead to lift the sights of mankind, defending the weak against exploitation, neglect, and servitude, and resisting every affront to freedom, innocence, or the dignity of any life. The death of such a man makes this world poorer, but the life of such a man has made this world so much better. The Pope, who kissed the ground of well over 100 countries, made 4 pilgrimages to the United States. He spoke to us with words not of comfort, but of challenge, to live up to our calling, to be fair and just and true to our ideals in every way. Our country, he said, is a providential nation, called to be a hospitable society, a welcoming culture. John Paul II understood all the gifts and the possibilities of the United States. As I left his office last year, the Pope took both of my hands in his and said, "God bless America," with as much feeling as I've ever heard those words uttered. All of us here tonight have had the good fortune on occasion of meeting notable and remembered figures, even heroic ones. I think it's safe to say that none of us is likely ever again to encounter so great a man as Pope John Paul II. We will carry with us images of his energetic and righteous life and the example of character he left to us all. We will remember the little-known cardinal from a captive nation who stepped onto a balcony and exhorted the faithful, "Be not afraid." We will remember the world leader who was a victim of malice and violence, then visited a jail cell to forgive the gunman, calm his fears, and call him a brother. We will remember the man whose very presence affirmed the goodness and dignity of life, not just in times of great vitality, but in years of declining strength and eventually in days of silence. For his life of integrity and deep kindness and moral courage, the Pope was loved by men, women, and children of all faiths. So it is fitting that our great and diverse country should fly its flag at half-staff in his memory, as 3 presidents of the United States pay the respects of the American people to John Paul the Great.
Certainly the Vice President speaks for us all in our feelings about the Pope and in the times we live in and in your tribute, which was moving and generous, Mr. Vice President. We thank you for that very much. And we thank you very much, you and Mrs. Cheney, for honoring us with your presence this evening, certainly to be sure. And now, it is time for a change of pace. To the extent that we change paces around here. Louis Black. Not yet, not yet. Now, indeed, though President Bush is not with us, I'm sure he would be interested to know that our featured entertainer, Louis Black, and he have something in common. They both went to Yale. Louis graduated 2 years after the president, so perhaps they nodded to each other in a hallway or said something to each other at class. Maybe not. Each took a different course through life, politics for the president, comedy for Louis, perhaps not so different after all. Louis also has a lot in common with many of us. I should mention to you that he's from the Washington area, Silver Spring actually, and he attended Springbrook High School. All you Springbrook fans, this is your chance. He graduated from the Yale School of Drama, the prestigious Yale School of Drama. He wrote plays, he acted in films, he's had an HBO special, he's been on The Daily Show. There isn't anything Louis hasn't done, and done funny. He also published a new book called Nothing Sacred. What does this mean? Anyway, it is now a pleasure to present America's foremost commentator on everything, Louis Black.
I would just like to say thank you and good night. I feel in that way we can go on about, anything I do from here on in could possibly ruin our relationship. Feel the laughter in the room as the comic enters. The Vice President, big laughs, really big laughs, nice laughs, funny stuff. The comedian, what's he gonna do? This could break down at any second, couldn't it? I was asked to do this, and I got to say, I've thought about it a long time, because look at the room. I know this room. My prom was in this room. I feel exactly the way that I felt that night. I'm wearing a tux, I'm uncomfortable, and once again, I'm not going to get lucky. This is not a comics room. Comedians don't appear on stage with 12 people sitting at either side of them. It looks mildly psychotic. If I could have choreographed them so at certain times I would do this, somebody pop up and sit down, it would be brilliant. I think things would have been a lot funnier and simpler if we could have just taken a film of me in my room here at the Hilton trying to put on my cummerbund by myself. I was nervous. I kind of calmed down about this, but I realized I was nervous when I was struggling with it. Now, normally, I'm smart enough to take the cummerbund and turn it around and snap it on my stomach. Oh, not tonight. Tonight I fought it, and then I fell down twice, and then I got up and I said, I'm going to do it. And I put it on my knees and tried to bring it up over my butt. I was born and raised in Silver Spring, and the reason... all right. Let's stay calm. Okay? It's a nice place to be from. It is the largest unincorporated city in the United States. What does that say about us? It says, gee, we'd like to govern ourselves, but we don't want to drive there. As a result of being born and raised near Washington, D.C., I decided to leave here. I really could not handle local news being the national news. I couldn't bear it. I realized by the time I was 15 or 16 and I was reading the paper, I was getting angrier and angrier about the government, be it Democrats or Republicans. And I realized that probably by my mid-20s, if I'd stayed, I'd be a homeless person sitting in Lafayette Park, waking up every day, yelling at the president, and then running to Congress to yell at them. Not the laugh I expected, but we'll move on. As soon as I accepted this the gig here this evening, I was told that I've started to get the calls. Don't use, you know what language you have to use tonight, Mr. Black. We don't use those words. I knew that. They said, please don't, you don't want to be, don't go overboard. You know, you find that fine line, which meant we want you to be you, but don't be you. Let me assure you, I won't go over that line, because I had the best year financially I've ever had in my entire life, and I don't need an audit. It is a privilege to perform for you this evening, and as I pointed out, it is also a royal pain in the ass. Some of you I know are saying, boy, he just crossed the line there. He said ass. Couldn't he have said posterior? No, because posterior isn't funny. There is no more difficult crowd to face in the entire country. I go on the road 5 nights a week, okay? No room is like this. Nothing. I'm sitting with distinguished Democrats, distinguished Republicans, a group of people who can't even agree on what the facts are anymore. And I'm supposed to find out what makes you laugh? I'll tell you this, it's difficult to figure out what the facts are now. It's unbelievable. In the case of Terry Schiavo, I have never seen anything quite like 2 sets of doctors who presented 2 totally, one set of doctors that said, well, she's brain dead, and the other set of doctors said, well, she could be dancing by Thursday. It's what they said. Don't owe it. It is what it is written. All I did was push it a little to make it funny. Did I go over the line? No. I know where the line is. I only say this and bring it up to show that 2 sets of doctors said, one said she was dead and the other said she was alive. How, if that's where modern medicine is at, we are screwed. And if that's where facts are at, we're in trouble. I believe the only place that you can truly find something factual is an elementary school menu. You go to the elementary school, and it's Monday, and it says there will be meatloaf and corn. And so you go to the cafeteria, and by God, there is meatloaf and corn. A real problem that we have in a room like this is also that there are people who believe that jokes should be politically correct. They can't be. I am sorry for you. It will not happen. Jokes are meant at times to offend. Laughter is not easy, so something that is politically correct doesn't jolt you into laughter. You can't have a politically correct joke. Why? Because they're not funny. Hear the laugh? Ha-ha. And then the ones, well, no, he's wrong. I heard one yesterday. I heard a knock-knock joke that was a doozy. I have a few suggestions. I decided to do part of my set as suggestions so that if you didn't laugh, I would go, well, they're just suggestions. The first is, I want, and I think this should be done, and I think it's something that I can get you to agree on, move Valentine's Day out of February. It's the wrong time of the year for the holiday of love, isn't it? In the heart of winter. We made the holiday up. It's not like St. Patrick's Day, which is a real holiday. Named, of course, after the patron saint of liquor and the man who invented the shot glass. Why would you celebrate the holiday of love in winter? Some poor man is digging out of his driveway. He's digging out after a blizzard. He's clearing the sidewalk. He spends 3 and 4 hours in a blizzard. And he goes in the house, and his wife looks up at him and says, "Happy Valentine's Day." And I believe the husband, at that point, should be allowed to take the shovel and hit her just lightly behind the knee, not to hurt her, but to bring her down. And it's flu season. It's flu season. And this was a bad flu season, the worst ever. We were told that the elder she, wherever that came from, the elderly should be getting the shots first. And I realized they were slow, so I got there faster. I have a question. Since the distinguished leadership is here, we can't make our own flu shots? That escapes us as a nation? How is that? We're buying it from the British? God love the British, but then we have to put it on a boat and get it over here? Are you kidding me? There are chem labs everywhere. In the late 60s, they made LSD. I think we could make a flu shot. Or just a placebo would be nice. Placebos work. You give somebody a flu shot, and they have 105 temperature, and I guarantee you, they'll go to work, they'll go, no, it can't be the flu. I had a flu shot. I also think that it's kind of silly to celebrate New Year's. I realize a lot of people love to celebrate New Year's. I don't understand it. It just seems to be weird. It's like, New Year's is great because that's when we drink with hats on. New Year's doesn't exist. So why do we celebrate it? Time is an illusion, isn't it? Minutes, seconds, hours, days, weeks, months, years. We made it up to keep track of stuff. You can't stand out on the corner of K Street with a friend after lunch and go, I'll meet you over here when the sun is there. Time is a river, my friends. The wise men have told us. Time is a river. And as you float down it, your paddle gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Happy New Year. As regard the press coverage and the congressional reaction to the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction, I will say this. It is something that I know firsthand because I was seated 8 feet from the television set because Justin Timberlake was on. And when he's on, I keep an eye on him. I believe I will kill myself while he's on TV. He will do something that will drive me so crazy that I will actually drop my head, run at the set, and break the glass, thereby killing him and myself. There was a tremendous... I was sitting 8 feet from the set, and I will tell you the image wasn't on the screen long enough for anyone to have seen a breast. If anyone did see a breast, they should report to the vice president and immediately join the CIA. I was shocked the next day when I woke up. I have to say this, and my beloved country had lost its mind. For the next 36 hours, every newscast began last night, an absolutely horrific moment at the Super Bowl. Janet Jackson's breast exposed to the entire nation. Millions of children, their lives ruined forever. Let's take a look. It over and over and over again in case we missed it. And then Congress screamed, Bring us the breast. We must see the breast. For 24 hours, you guys locked up, and you stared at it so long that I thought Osama bin Laden must be hiding there. Let me assure you, no child in the history of mankind has been exposed to a breast accidentally and then suffered a moral epileptic seizure. Once again, I expected a bigger laugh. I thought we were moving, but then it was, oh, well, no, my child is wearing braces now because of that incident. Now, I'm not going to do that. This has gone too well. I'm not going to push it. It really has been a pleasure and to be here this evening. And this is because now that it's over, I get to drink. And I've actually, I've enjoyed, I've really enjoyed this. And let me just tell you, it was the worst 24 hours I've ever had in my life coming up to the event. And now what I'll get from people is, well, you know, you weren't offensive enough. You'd lose either way. You guys know that. My mother, though, and that's the reason I'm here, my parents are here this evening. And they've been here all their lives, and this is the nicest place they've ever been. They've lived around Congress and the president, and nobody ever said, hey, Jeanette and Sam, come on down. My mother was actually met Senator McCain this evening, so she can now die happy. I think that what I learned from 9/11 was something very important, and that is that patriotism is important in this country. Religion is important in this country. And patriotism and religion without humor is where we run into trouble. That's where things go. It's where it goes awry. It's why our enemy is as psychotic as they are. It's true. I firmly believe this. These are people who are patriotic and religious, and they are the most humorless group of pricks on the planet. These are people who wandered the desert for year after year after year and never once ran into a knock-knock joke, which is the price I think you pay for living in tents. But one would have thought there would have at least been a flap-flap joke, don't you? I think what makes this country great, and when you in Congress talk about it, and when the leadership talks, you always talk about the spirit of the American people and the will of the American people, and I think what really sees us through is our sense of humor. No country, except for possibly the Irish on St. Paddy's Day, there isn't a country that has a sense of humor like ours does, because every type of person who walks the planet Earth lives here, and if we didn't keep laughing, we'd kill each other. So, when you look at these people, I know that they have no humor, because for them to have actually sat there and been told by someone that when they die by killing someone, and they do this in the name of Allah, and that they will immediately go to heaven, where they will be met by 72 virgins. The fact that these people didn't understand that that's got to be the punchline to a joke. I have lived on this planet, and never once have I run into a virgin. God bless you all. Good night.
Louis Black. He's clearly got his own nuclear solution. And now I would like to take a moment to thank a very, very special group of people who work hard at making our lives on Capitol Hill go smoothly and easily. These are the staffs of the radio and television galleries. On the House side, there, of course, is Tina Tate, Olga Kornacki, Gail Davis, Andy Elias, Jay Rupert, and Kimberly Otis. Let's hear it for the House. And on the Senate side, we have Mike Mastrian, our new chair for the Senate, or director, Jane Rule, Michael Lawrence, and Sarah Robertson. Let's hear it for them. Now, before we close here and get to the suites and start drinking with Lewis and others, we will, when we pass on the gavel here, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge some other people who, without their help, we wouldn't have gotten this far. One especially, who helped me enormously in preparing for this event, my colleague on the Correspondence Board, Annie Tin of C-SPAN. Annie did the really hard work of putting out the fires, keeping the focus on the dinner when the focus got very blurred, I may say. And as Hemingway once mentioned, she showed grace under fire. So I thank her very much. And of course, to my lovely wife, Barbara, sitting in front of me here. Barbara. A constant source of support and inspiration, to put up with the constant challenge of being married to somebody who I fear is almost married to covering Congress. Now, that's quite a challenge. Also my children, John, Megan, and Beth, and their spouses, Elizabeth, Bob, and Scott. To my bosses at WTOP, Jim Farley and Mike McMurdy, they've indulged me in the pursuit of Congress. Thank you, Jim and Bob, Jim and Mike. This is the greatest feat in the world. I think we all know that. And now it is time to welcome in our new Congressional Radio Television Correspondence Chair, who has the privilege over the next 12 months of sweating out next year's dinner. Mike Vaquera of NBC News.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know we're eager to get to the after parties, and I just want to say, when you get there, please raise your glass and toast to the greatest beat in Washington, D.C., covering the United States Congress. Thank you very much, and good night.
Oh, you're so
Boys and have nice gold drink.